What's going on, everybody? It's Frito and Weagle here today for another meta discussion. There was a big PTR patch that went live into testing a couple days ago, and it changed so many things that me and Weagle would like to try to break down and predict where the upcoming gameplay meta is headed now that a bunch of characters are going to be quite a bit different, but not all of them so different. The first one I want to start off with right away, because it was kind of a bugbear for me, especially even in the last meta discussion that you and I did, was Soldier, who got changed, I guess, as little as you could imagine him to be changed. Now, I think I'm a little bit more sold that this might be okay than you are, so I want to hear what you have to say first.
I think for me, I mean, we've spoke a little bit, and yes, it can make some difference in some scenarios, but the main thing for me is that I think he's still going to be an easier, more reliable pick than McCree, and even though they don't serve exactly the same purpose, I still don't think this is enough to take him down to McCree's level. Now, I think a lot of people think that McCree needs maybe also a very comical buff that seems like it's not going to do anything, and then maybe that will get them in a similar place. And I mean, this just goes back to that old debate since the game came out, really, about would we rather have the skill heroes be the heroes that were more meta, and that's a debate everyone still has to this date. But for me, I don't think the Soldier makes a huge difference. I think that he's still really, really good. But in some situations, obviously, it does make a difference, and you can tell people why.
Okay, first, let's recap the way things worked with the timeline of Soldier. He got his damage buffed up to 20. Now, on the PTR, it's dropped by a measly 1, and that seemingly doesn't do much. And I think, Weagle, you're right probably to point out that the matchup between his pickability between McCree might not pan out entirely, but I want to make an argument that I think the general butterfly effect of all the other characters and how they're slightly moving up all the time, it seems, that now Soldier might be a bit more contested. And the reason for that is, well, one, it takes one more headshot for Soldier to be able to kill a squishy. That might not seem like a lot, but he used to be able to 5-shot something to the head to deal 200 damage. Now it's going to take another 6-shot. Small, nuanced thing, not incredibly important, but when you start to subtract even a little bit of a variable number here or there, then you can start to feel that a character can't really damage through healing like they used to, and I think that's where you can start to see where Soldier's lowering his damage even a little bit can start to affect things in his ability to sustain damage over time, because obviously if you can live with 1 or 2 HP and get away and get healed up to full, it's as good as if you did 10 or whatever difference damage. It doesn't really make a difference. It's whether or not you can finish that kill or not. Right now, with the combination of him slightly getting worse, but not to the point where I think any Soldier player would be afraid or panicking that they would have to drop their main now. Other characters to be able to combat Soldier, I think, are getting stronger. So with that being the case, and if that continues to be a trend, we can start to see Soldier's dominance or his assumed dominance, because of course on this channel we've explained that we think he's a bit overrated in some contexts, will start to drop over time. And I think, namely, 2 characters that duel him quite well, and maybe will continue to duel him quite well, are Hanzo and Reaper. So the Soldier thing, at the end of the day, I kind of just wish the ultimate had slightly less damage, because then when you combined it with Nano, then it wouldn't team wipe so easily. Once we get that out of the way, I think we'll start to see Soldier to be in a very reasonable spot and not dominate too many styles of play. But I will say, I think we can commend Blizzard for not taking the sledgehammer option to this, because a lot of players, I'm sure, are afraid that they're, especially in some of the ranks, that their Soldier teammates, if you take the damage away from them, then they'll never kill that Pharah that they struggle to kill now with as much damage as they do. But
the thing about the ultimate of Soldier, and I think it is the main reason it's so good, or one of, I guess, it's so strong, but so easy to use up against all of the other DPS ultimates, and I think that's what people don't realize sometimes, because, like, if you use Pharah's ult, you're so vulnerable, the same as McCree, whereas you got Soldier and you press Q and it's pretty much 3 kills for days, and I think that that is a very important thing to think about when you're talking about Soldier. Now, the one thing with all this difference that it makes for the damage and the one extra shot and everything, well, does that make Pharah even better then? That's the next question, because she's already wrecking people and she hasn't been tweaked. So it's going to be interesting to see now if she's going to be that bit stronger and harder to kill now that Soldier is that little bit weaker.
We did discuss this last time with the whole Pharah issue. We put her in the category of a hero that probably could receive a small nerf to the benefit of the masses of players. But there's a weird zone that you can put a hero, at least in our opinion, where they could either be plus or minus, or like stay the same or go down slightly and it not really change anything. A very small change to some degree can sometimes be equal to no change at all. And I know I just argued that the Soldier change could be perceived as somewhat of a change. Anyway, the point is, Pharah, I think the bigger problem is the distance and the angle she can take with flying, not necessarily one little chip of damage here or there. I don't think that's necessarily the difference, and it more so might come down to players learning how to engage indoors outside of where she can fight, and once that's a thing, maybe we can see the Pharah dominance start to drop down in matchmaking at least, because I don't think it's evident in the pro meta for sure, but it really changes at different ranks as well, where it seems like Pharah's really good at certain tiers and then goes up and down depending on the level of hit scans and players playing Widowmaker, how good Ana players are. It's really funky and difficult to nail down.
Well, the thing for me is, actually, I haven't even told Fredo this yet, so it's an exclusive, but I'm in the middle of thinking about and writing a video for the channel that explains all of the different contexts of a game. So is it solo queue or are you duo queuing? Do you have a good comp? What rank you are? There's so many different things that affect the meta and what the meta is, and there's so many different metas, not only dependent on your rank or solo queue, but just the specific game you're in. Is your team throwing? Is your team got 3 people that only play one specific hero, and then they're on heroes that can't play, stuff like that? So
trickling in as well. That's why that's a big one too with Pharah, because she can fly, if you trickle in, she'll just hit you. So that's another factor as well. You may even have the right comp to deal with it, but if you trickle in the whole time, then it looks like she's dominating, but really she's just punishing trickling like many other heroes can.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I think I want to move on to Hanzo. I'm going to jump straight into Hanzo because I used to hate him. I used to hate Scatter Arrow. I was never that good with him either, and then a few months back I started picking him up and playing him more and more and more, and now absolutely love playing him. And this change to his kit is significant because, especially on 2CP where there's little windows and stuff for you to jump up in, originally you would go up there and try and get picks, and that'd be a great way to play Hanzo on attack. Now you can already have your arrow charged when you run up a wall, therefore you can shoot and get out of there before anyone can even see you, really, especially with lag, latency, and Pika's advantage, that kind of thing. So picture the first point of Hanamura on attack, you've got the window on the left. Well, you charge your arrow now, run up the wall, and you can just shoot it. I mean, before it was already strong to run up the wall and then charge it, and now when you run up the wall and charge it afterwards, it's faster anyway. So I think that Hanzo is going to be really, really strong. And I think that the 10% difference to his charge speed, where he charges that bit faster, is also quite a big difference. And I really can't wait for this to go live. I hope it is a thing. I do think, however, Hanzo is actually underrated, and he's in a bit of a quirky place because he's always been a meme hero, and no one really takes him seriously, and we've spoke about this before, but no one respects Hanzo at lower play, and that is because they've not seen many good Hanzos. So when I'm playing at Diamond or Masters, depending on what account I'm on, people don't respect that, and I can just delete them. And yet when you're at GM, there is some trouble using Hanzo because instantly you've got a Genji in your face and a Winston and things like that. So how Hanzo is perceived right now, I think, is that he isn't great when he already is, and I think this change is going to make him that bit better.
I think you're exactly right, Liam. And Hanzo's crazy for me as well because I'm sort of delayed in my Hanzo experience to you. Perhaps I use some of your guides that you made on the channel for our viewers to even improve my own Hanzo game, and I've started to pick him up in my games as well. And the interesting thing with Hanzo is when you can learn how to make his output reliable, you start to really feel the impact of his ranged damage, and I think we can make and need to make, in fact, more videos and guides on how to play Hanzo, especially this new Hanzo, because although Soldier over there is looking like that real strong, stable pick, he can't do the things that Hanzo can do, which makes it really interesting because Hanzo can jump up a wall, and you didn't mention this, but it kind of goes without saying, with a scatter arrow, even, right? With a scatter arrow already, pop, dead, right? And that's an insane pick-off potential that can snowball fights. On top of that, his follow-up shots are slightly faster. I think that's the most important thing to me with the charge speed. I don't know what you think, if it's more the damage that he'll be able to do. I think more so it's the ability to pull up a full charge shot, shoot it, potentially miss or hit a body shot or whatever, but to have that follow-up shot ready, like the speed in which of him to be able to keep laying down an arrow is very important, and that makes him a force to be reckoned with, and something that as a community, I think, need to start to embrace because it can be legit. And if you learn how to carefully and respect the Hanzo, you can get a lot of value out of him, even if you're not Seagull, right? I was afraid to touch Hanzo, right? I didn't touch him for like the whole year the channel's been live. I thought he was a character I could never play. And taking a reasonable approach to it, I think a lot of players can actually get some value out of Hanzo. So we can stop seeing Soldier every single game, is what I'm trying to say.
Something we were comparing Hanzo Scatter Arrow to yesterday, actually, was Roadhog's Hook. Because I believe now the cooldowns are about the same, if not exactly the same. Can't remember off the top of my head.
8 seconds, yes.
Yeah. So you effectively get a free kill every 8 seconds with Scatter Arrow if you get competent enough with it. And I think it's just as easy to be competent with that as it is Roadhog's Hook. And again, massively undervalued in my opinion. And I think the issue with Hanzo is people playing him wrong. I think they're playing him as a sniper, but if you get him in that medium range where he's dangerous, where he's slightly elevated, where the scatter arrow becomes reliable to hit, you got a recon arrow up. I'd never thought about this before, but if you have Hanzo's recon arrow, it does take 20 seconds to cool down. However, it lasts for 10 seconds. So you can actually have a radar up on your screen for 50% of the time in a game. That is huge. On top of the fact you can now one shot easily while running up walls every 8 seconds, massively undervalued, and I think that we'll see more and more Hanzos as time goes on. I still think he's a very scary defensive pick for your team. I think if you're taking him on defense, you have to be exceptional because it's just, there's so much dive now, especially people are picking up Winston more. Fire is still a thing. Hanzo's just not that good against these things. And on defense, he's always going to be a rough pick, same as Widow. But, you know, occasionally, again, there might be some good situations where you can implement them to your defensive game as well.
Can we move on to my favorite edgelord?
Yeah.
I want to talk about Reaper, I think, every chance I get. Okay. The Reaper change is small, and this is something that Weagle was to point out when he did a Reaper guide last year, I think, was that there was a trick that you could do, which is kind of irrelevant now, but because Reaper's reload is so quick, you could actually drop your guns, and at the point where the ammo goes back into your clip, more or less animation cancel into Wraith form, if that makes sense. So quickly reload, pop into Wraith form, and then when you come out of Wraith form, you would have your reload anyway. Now, whenever you hit Wraith form, you just get an instant reload, kind of like a McCree roll. And the question is this a good enough buff? And to a player like me, who's been trying to campaign to respect and fear the Reaper this whole time, from meta to meta, that he, in the right spot, he can delete even any of the characters we've already mentioned right now. If he's in a close range duel with them, they're afraid of him. This type of change helps escalate the pace at which he's played. And this is a stark difference to comparing him to Roadhog, because a lot of people say, well, they both have shotguns. Roadhog has a ranged hook and sets up an insta-kill. Why not just pick Roadhog? Well, the reason why you pick Reaper is the pace and the aggressive positioning that you can take with Reaper, because you always can be lurking around a corner real quick, even ahead of your team, and be in a spot where a Roadhog can easily be punished, though sometimes isn't in solo queue, side note, but go to take that duel, probably win it, and then Wraith away to tell the tale. But with Wraith form reloading your weapon, now you're instantly scary again, and the pace and momentum that you can evoke in the middle of the battle is increased, right? It's kind of similar almost to how increasing the fire speed of Hanzo kind of keeps laying down the fire to that extent. whenever you reduce the amount of downtime a character has, and that would be the Reaper reload, even though it's fast, you can make him lethal in a situation where he may have had to reload and get smacked in the face. So I'm really excited about this change. I think it's subtle and smart. I am not really sure why we're still leaving the really loud teleport sounds, but if I have this and I can keep shooting longer, I think it's good. It put him from where I thought he was viable to now a bit more viable, and maybe the argument is a little more obvious to everyone.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with the whole Reaper thing all the way through, really. I mean, you could always do this reload thing. It might save you, I don't know, a quarter of a second, which could help occasionally, and then them few times we do forget to reload as well, it's helpful. But I pretty much agree with Fredo, especially on some of the King of the Hill maps. I really like to play Reaper, and it's very satisfying to see a soldier get cocky, put down his health pack, and then you're like, no, actually, I can shoot straight through any healing you want to do. So I already rate Reaper as it is. I think the next change, although slight, is Reinhardt. His ultimate technically got a nerf, but it's a fix, but it's a nerf. It's effectively a nerf. He doesn't knock people out of the sky as much as he used to. There's something like a 2-meter height, even though it is a ground shatter, it goes up 2 meters as well. So now it's less likely that when you're jumping above the Rein as Genji, that he'll hammer you down. Although, even just in the training room the other day, I managed to knock down a bot that was at least over a couple of meters above me. So it still goes over some objects. It's still a little bit buggy on how it works. There's a few videos been around recently that actually do show how buggy some of Reinhardt's abilities are. Some of them have also been stealth fixed as well. We've just never covered it, really. One of the issues Reinhardt had previously was that if their Rein pins you but misses, and you then pin into him, and he hits a wall, if he hasn't finished his animation, it knocks you over and not him. It's like a massive bug that they fixed. So I think they know that these things are there for Reinhardt, and I think that they'll continue to try and patch them as they go. I think that they could easily make Earthshatter quite underwhelming if they were to lower that 2-meter thing anymore, because there's so many little boxes and steps and stuff on the map. There's got to be a little bit of leeway with it, or else it'll just become unusable. I think it'll just become really, really bad in a lot of the maps and stuff.
True. Also, if it was too low, a normal jump might be able to go over it, right? And I don't know, it's got a really weird middle point to where it used to hit Pharah as she was trying to jump jet away. And now, hopefully, you can feel like Genjis and Pharahs can jump over it a little bit, and they start to fix some of these weird wraparound going through geometry issues with the Earthshatter as well. Couple changes left. Do we want to quick mention Genji? His change was similar to Hanzo, but I don't know if we felt that it was as impactful, of course.
I think it's cool. I think that they obviously need to fix the current bugs that are going on, and I think there's probably some with Hanzo too, where the new cancel animation thing when you run up a wall is causing problems, and people are getting like 10 to 12 swings out of Genji's blade, which is nearly double what you're supposed to get. So in the right places right now on certain maps where it's enclosed, if you incorporate a Swift Strike to a wall run to a Swift Strike, you can keep resetting your blade and get nearly double the damage out of it per second that you're supposed to be able to. So it has definitely presented some problems, but I think when that is fixed, it's just a cute little change, as Rito would say, to Genji, just to make him slightly better 1% of the time or something. Like it's not a massive change at all.
Reason being, of course, because if Hanzo can attack immediately when jumping up a wall, he has an insta-kill, of course, with the bow, and Genji, more or less, he could have, Swift struck after he jumped anyway, so it's not a massive change to his playstyle, just more of a quality of life thing, so that's nice. Moving on, anything to make him play more fluid is always good, in my opinion. So the last...
Orisa.
Yep, the last one we're going to go through is Orisa, where we did cover this in a separate video, but I think me and Liam weren't on that video, so we can give our 2 cents as well, where her fusion driver, her main weapon, the damage was reduced by 15%. They didn't buff the ult charge, which is important as well, to compensate for that. They normally do. But Protective Barrier cooldown is now on 8 seconds, whereas it used to be 12, meaning that you have it more often. So
something that I need to say before we get into this is something that applies to a lot of Overwatch, and again will be in this video I'm going to do about metas and all these different things. And some people are saying that Orissa's already good and that she's great at low ranks and that we don't appreciate that. And there's a bit of an issue in Overwatch where people are happy winning because the enemy team are making more mistakes, and I think Orisa can fit into that category a lot right now. If you're playing Orisa and getting tons of value and like it feels like you're carrying with her, you probably could have done that with any other hero because she's not in the best of spots right now. Like, she gets barely no use. I have seen her picked by the pros on one map, I think on Lijiang, where there's the pit and she can be used there. So that's something important to remember when playing her and other heroes is she getting value, or is she getting value because they're not really playing very well against it? That's the thing. So with this barrier change, I think she could do more of that. I think especially at a choke point, like again, Hanamura on defense, if you've got a Rein shield up, and then you've got this Orisa shield every 8 seconds, which by the way, you can actually put up at the start of the game, have it regen, and then when they destroy it, you have another one straight away, which is crazy. I think a lot of teams, again, at the lower ranks, just like people say, are going to really struggle against 2 barriers up all the time, plus sim spam going through it. They're trying to make her like Reinhardt, but I think at the minute, she's kind of enforcing what he does. I don't think she replaces him anyway, and we have done a full video on that, and you can check that out. I don't think she should be an anchor tank. I mean, she could be if they wanted to do that, but as we said in the other video, her kit currently is too varied and not honed towards one specific task, and she can't move her shield around. It's good that she can place it more often now, and it'll be annoying and hard for people to destroy, but you can't move it around when you want. When you get close to her, you're not really scared unless she happens to get some shots in your head, but it's so difficult that it's not likely. She's a weird hero. She's in a weird spot.
Right, we can elaborate a little bit on the other video we made on this subject as well. I'm going to compare to Rein for a second. Rein can find himself in 2 very effective spots where he could be shielding anybody anywhere, and as long as his barrier's up, protecting damage, he's creating like an initiation angle. Or he also is really scary brawling in close range using his abilities. Orisa, however, really has to stay at this defined medium range engagement where she's not taking a lot of heat, but kind of zoning and crossfiring. Now, when a character is pushed into an area of battle like that and doesn't really have the flexibility to do more, they are almost forced to be niche. And that's why I think she'll almost never be an anchor tank until she can feel comfortable playing in the 2 positions that Reinhardt does. So basically, Rein could be your shield way in the back, like with Orisa, but also can then jump down on the point and contest it and fight. Orisa can't do both of those things. She can do one slightly better, perhaps, because she also can fire from range and zone with halt. But for all intents and purposes, as far as I can view the character, she plays a lot more close to like a supportive play style, and a lot of viewers, and I think even Jeff Kaplan at some point said that a character like Sombra could be deemed to be in the support category, and I think she might as well just get moved over to the support category. And a character like Orisa is more or less a supportive tank because she doesn't hollow out a play style on the battlefield where she's strong in. She sort of just aids everybody else along, and that playstyle might be viable, but I think it's viable in the tech pick type category instead of just being a main tank, anchor tank. To some degree, I don't know if Blizzard has a term for Winston as a main tank, because Winston's a main tank too, but does the team anchor around him, or do they sort of like mobility flood in with his dive, right? So like a main dive tank. So that's the 2 ways we've seen main tanks work, and
I think it's about enabling your team, right? A lot of tanks will enable your team in some way. Orisa doesn't really do that offensively or defensively. I mean, I would say she does it slightly better on defense now with a barrier change, but on attack, what are you going to do? Winston can dive in, Rein can angle his shield with the payload or whatever it may be, whereas Orisa's just kind of stood there doing mostly nothing damage with an ability that can keep her alive and stop all crowd control stuff. But it's not honed. There's nothing there. I mean, even her ultimate, I would argue that her ultimate is terrible. Takes forever to build. Usually by the time you pop it down, it'll either get destroyed because you're all being grabbed or something. It has like no health. I also find the lines that it creates from the unit to all your characters really off-putting and really obnoxious, and there's just lines all over your screen. I really don't rate it in any way, actually. It's not that I don't want her to be meta, or I don't want her to ever be good. I just don't think she is really good at any one thing. Why would you ever play Orisa over Zarya? Zarya bubbles can block a Reinhardt hammer down. Orisa's left shift only blocks it for her, not her team, whereas Zarya's blocks it for anyone behind her. You know, you can initiate with Zarya's bubbles on a Winston. If you're Orisa, you just stood there being a horse. I don't know what else.
The sad thing is, I find Orisa's playstyle very fun, actually, but it fit where we've seen the pros use her, the very limited skill set, the very limited time I've seen her picked was in two scenarios. One, on Sanctum, on Nepal, where it has this really big pit. And I will say, if you're playing triple tank and the enemy team's playing triple tank, and they don't have an Orisa and you do, you can halt them off. But if the enemy team's more mobile than you, then that starts to look not as good. The other way, of course, is to enforce a Torb turret, where she can be zoning with the Torb turret and create this annoying angle of attack to sort of trap the attackers into. This is kind of like the Symmetra playstyle to some degree on defense, where you're luring them through the map in order to take this chip damage that can potentially burst them down and really punish mistakes. That Orisa can kind of do, but until I think another area of her kit is optimized, whether that is like if she could move faster while shooting, if halt was a bit snappier and responsive, she's going to find difficulty fighting in a bunch of other scenarios. Whereas Sombra right now had been buffed and buffed to the point where she feels really honed and great to play in a lot of scenarios. And if you're a 6 Sombra, you can be effective just about on every map now. But it takes that really niche playstyle. I think I'd like to see Orisa's niche playstyle taken to that Sombra level with tweaks moving forward.
Yeah, I just think that right now, Dive is amazing. And again, it does depend on the rank you're playing at, because at lower levels you see a lot of triple tank still, and you'll see people reluctant to run one tank and will tilt if there's 3 DPS, and then you end up with 6 DPS because everyone's tilted. At GM level, everyone's playing Winston, Genji, Tracer, Pharah, 2 healers. And it is so good, because as long as each person's good at their hero, it doesn't require that much coordination. You just kind of go with the Winston and everything dies. And Orisa is no good against that.
Yet, I still stand. If Halt was sick, if Halt was like really quick and you could quickly burst out that CC, then those divers might be afraid of it. But right now it's kind of slow and sluggish and unresponsive, so you can't pounce on those opportunities. But I think if Halt gets buffed, she'll be good against, better than Rein against dive, at least. I stand by that opinion.
The other thing is, as well, is do we want her to be really good? Because I, for one, much prefer, personally, now you guys can let me know what you think of this in the comments if you've got this far, I personally prefer dive. It's more fun, it's active, it's great to watch and play, and I much prefer watching that from the pro scene than triple tank as well. And I do not want to see barriers everywhere, because when we did some of the PTR, maybe when Orisa first came out, we ran into a couple of comps that were Reinhardt, Orisa, and Symmetra. And there were barriers everywhere. And it was the least fun I've ever had on Overwatch. So I want it to be better, but I do not want barrier meta, okay? I do not want that. That is like that would make me stop playing. It's like how useless are so many heroes once that's a thing, you know? Like, if there's barriers everywhere, you can't shoot through that. Soldier ain't shooting through 3 barriers, you know? You have to take a different approach to the game if that becomes a thing, and I just think it's not what I want at all.
I tend to agree, but I think if Halt's buffed, then we don't have to fall into barrier meta. I stop buffing the barrier, buff Halt. I think that's where the fun is in Orisa. So we'll see how this moves forward, but either way, a lot of positive changes coming down the pike for the Overwatch meta, and a lot of heroes to a game server near you. I think that's it for this discussion.
Yeah. That's everything I have to say. Let us know what you think in the comments to this meta stuff. We try to be accurate. We're not always right, but I think Hanzo's going to be great, and I can't wait for that. Let us know what you think. Be sure to check out our Twitter, our Twitch, and our Discord, where you guys can find the WrestleMania Dreams. And be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed. Have a great day as always. Bye.
Bye.